here in this city, offer our prayers and our condolences to those families that lost loved ones, and to the Dallas Police Department and to the Dallas Area Regional Transit Authority who lost officers. Make no mistake, this was a calculated massacre of law enforcement personnel. There is no other description of this. This was done by design. This was done with malice. This was done with hatred. This was done with intent. And there will be a price to pay. And for our officers and for Chief Ward and I, whose job it is to make sure that those officers get home every night safely to their families, we are going to take the appropriate precautions to make sure that they are safe. I was at District 2 this morning at 6:15, and at District 3 soon thereafter, to just let them know that I have their back, and that we will do whatever we have to do to make sure that they get home to their families safely. It is a ugly time in America for a lot of reasons. There is a dynamic in this country that certainly I haven't seen in the 30+ years that I have been in public life. There are reasons for that, but ultimately as a nation, we've got to understand that violence is never the answer. And the only way you combat violence is with love. And for us as a department, we will continue to do what we have done every day, certainly in the 30 years that I've been here, and that is to continue to work to make sure that that bond between our community and the people that we serve, particularly communities of color, is strong, and that what happened in Dallas doesn't happen here. But I can tell you that we are in an unusual place as a country. I don't think it is helped by some of the inflammatory rhetoric and the divisive rhetoric that we see by some who aspire to run for president, candidly. I don't think it's helpful that the United States Congress has refused to act in any way, shape, or form on any type of efforts to reduce gun violence and reduce the availability of guns to people who should not have them. I think our community, and particularly our communities of color, we've got to strengthen that relationship, not just here in Tampa, but across America as well. And that relationship between police departments across this country and communities of color, that work is a daily effort. It's not something you do with one training session. It's something that you do officer by officer, community leader by community leader, citizen by citizen. And we strive to do that here in Tampa. We are not perfect. There is always room for improvement. We strive for that every day under the leadership of Chief Ward. But ultimately, we have got to understand that we are all Americans, that we all have a common destiny together, and a common obligation to hold each other up in very, very difficult times, and this is clearly one of them. I think America will, just like they did 2 weeks ago in Orlando, at the attack on our LGBT community and our Hispanic community in Orlando, that this country will rise up and say, enough of the violence. That is not who we are. Do we have challenges? Yes. Do we have problems in this country? Yes, we do. But violence is not the answer. And what occurred in Dallas, there is no excuse for. Those officers got up to do a job that we hired them to do, that they love to do. They love to go out and serve this community and keep this community safe, and to know that there was a target on their back and on the backs of officers all over this country is just unacceptable. And so those of us who are here, who are in positions of leadership, whether it's mayors or police chiefs around the country, have an obligation to grieve with the people in Dallas, but we also have a moral obligation to do what we can to make sure that this doesn't happen, and whatever bonds that have been broken in this community, that we repair them and restore what we know is good about America. So this is a really, really sad day for the officers, not just in Dallas, but for officers around the country. We're going to protect our cops, pure and simple. And we're going to make sure that they get home every night to their families safely and in one piece. That's all they ask. That's all they want. They want to serve their community, and they want to come home at night. And there are 6 officers in Dallas who are not going home tonight. Chief?
I'd just like to start by saying, here in Tampa, we are grieving with those officers and their family members in Dallas. The senseless loss of those officers is something that no chief ever wants to experience. We have put measures in place in Tampa to make sure our officers are safe and the community is safe as well. As we move forward in this healing process, we have a great relationship with our community. We can't do it without our community. We've put measures in place over the last year that have strengthened that bond with our community. The relationship with our community can't be any better. We're not perfect, but we're going to strive forward as we improve those relationships in matters that concern our citizens. We meet with our citizens on a regular basis to make sure that we hear their concerns. Our officers are out every day engaged in the community to make sure that we, as a law enforcement agency, are doing the right things. Ultimately, our job is to protect the community. Saying that, my goal is to make sure our officers have those resources they need to make sure that they're doing the job and they're safe and they're able to go home every night to visit their families as well. So as we move forward in this process, we're going to heal together as a community. Like I said before, there's nothing that can explain the tragic loss of those officers. Being targeted by an individual with his own motives. There's nothing that can explain that. These guys were out doing their job, trying to do the right thing, and were targeted by an individual with his own agenda. That can't happen in Tampa, and it will not happen in Tampa. Thank you.
All right, we'll take any questions. Chief, you heard.
I have a question, just simply, will you change the way we do things when it comes to protests? Many see protests as being our democracy, having that right to protest. Will your officers do things differently from now on?
Well, our goal is to everyone has that right to freedom of speech, and we're going to do what it takes to protect the community as they exercise those rights. As long as those protests are peaceful, we're here in support. We will only engage and be involved if those protests become violent. We respect those rights, and we're going to do what we can to accommodate those protests.
Chief, can you heard from the Dallas Police Chief that, in his words, we need more support from the community. Do you see any of that here? Do you feel any need in this community for either more support, or do you feel a lack thereof of support from the community in order for you guys to do your job?
I believe we have the support of the community. This morning I had several emails from members of the community, and members that I respect, that expressed their condolences for the loss of those officers. As we move forward, I think our relationship with the community is where it needs to be. We're not perfect, and I'm sure there's room for improvement, and that's the process that we're going to work through together. We're going to work through that as a team. It's not law enforcement against the community. We will work together as a team to make sure this city is strong.
Is there anything your officers are going to change the way they, do things on a daily basis? In light of this, is there anything that you see as even possible that could make a situation like that any safer?
Well, our goal is always to get out in the community and engage in conversation. That's the only way we can figure out what's the pulse of the community. So the officers have been instructed to get out of the cars, engage the community, and there's a simple conversation. The community needs to know that these officers are human, and they have family members as well. And I think moving forward, that process kind of strengthens that bond. We encourage our community to go through our Citizens Academy. It's an eye-opening experience. Everyone thinks this job is easy, and those members that have been through our Citizens Academy come out with a different perspective.
What are you telling your officers today who might feel uncomfortable in light of this shooting? What's their morale like? What's been said during roll call?
Well, it's important that they understand that I have their back, and we're going to do our job. We're going to continue to do our job in keeping the city safe. I'm going to provide them with additional resources that I think they need to keep them safe on a daily basis. We've instituted some deployment practices that I think is going to get us through this next couple of days, and I think that's the key to moving forward.
Chief, this is a question for you, and then perhaps I'd like to answer from the mayor as well. How much of this anger directed towards law enforcement officers do you think is the result of social media and the immediacy of video? We've seen, recently, a number of cases where, whether it's body camera video from an officer or cell phone video video from a bystander shows graphic violence that we might have once heard about but not seen. So how much of this anger is the result of that?
Well, I think a great deal of it is social media. Something happens in Louisiana, and in 24 hours it's national news, which has nothing to do with Tampa. And sometimes when that information gets put out, all law enforcement get painted with that same brush, which kind of affects what we're trying to do here in Tampa. I think our relationship with our community is strong, but when stuff like that gets put out, it kind of puts us, makes us a step back, puts us a step backwards. And ultimately, information that gets put out like that without having all the facts kind of hampers what we're trying to do.
Mayor, it's a two-edged sword. You know, I'm sure you want transparency, you want people to know what's going on with law enforcement, and you like having the tool of knowing